Before anything else, I'd just like to say how genuinely thrilled and surprised I am to see such a turnout. One of the things I've learned, I am not a Normandy Beach resident. I am actually a resident of Normandy Shores. My family has owned the house. We're newcomers. We've owned the house since 1967. So, you know, it's just basically yesterday. We're going to go back 12,000 years. You think I'm being little? And for the 11,900 years, I'd say the histories were identical. But in the last 100 years or so, things really diverged. And I think as we talk a little bit about it, we'll get an idea why. In 2005, my spouse Dale and I were helping Mom fix up the house. And one of the things we wanted to do was install a new clothes tree out in the back. So we were just digging deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and we got down to about 3.5 feet below surface, and all of a sudden we heard clunk, this very metallic clunk. Well, Dale being Dale, got extremely excited thinking there was a boat buried in our backyard. And so, look, it could be from the hurricane of 38, I mean, it's possible. I, being who I am, was all excited, convinced we found Captain Cook's treasure. Well, as it transpired, it was neither. We dug down to about 4 feet. I remember vividly Dale in the hole with his feet sticking straight up in the air, just scraping, and we started pulling out pieces of corrugated iron, braided steel cable, and we're looking at these little chunks and pieces, and we were mystified. Because we had always believed that this was virgin sand, virgin dew, and it just basically been paved over in 1955, and magically all these houses appeared. So this was the first hint that any of us at 29 Jacobson had that something had existed before. And so I sort of got a little curious and I started asking questions. The next day on the beach, a bunch of the gang was sitting there, and Grace Hodge, who has been coming down to the shore since long before there was a Normandy Shores, said, "Oh, you must have found parts of the fish pound." Now, each one of those words meant something to me separately, but when she put fish and pound together, it meant absolutely nothing to me. I just stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. So I said, all right, there's something going on here, and I started researching. And what I found was kind of interesting. Here is the barrier beach, separating the Atlantic Ocean from Barnegat Bay. It's now commonly called the Barnegat Peninsula, but that's a fairly recent nomenclature. A lot of people know it as Dover Beach is north. Most of us just call it the Barrier Island or the island. But this narrow strip of sand extends to the mainland today, and it goes all the way down to Barnegat Inlet, where it then continues south of that is Long Beach Island. And the area north of Island Beach, as we all know, is now very heavily developed. Most of the housing stock that was built in the 20th century. Most of the homes are second homes, but as one of you can testify, that's changing gradually. The Barrier Island is connected in 3 spots to the mainland, up in Bayhead, across the Bellov Bridge, and then across the bridge from the seaside into Tom's River. But for those of you who aren't exactly clear where Normandy Shores is, it's situated here in Peterson Lane and Jacobson Lane. Now, this area, just like all of the part of the peninsula, is comprised of some out-and-out municipalities like Lavalette, but mostly a lot of associations such as the Normandy 9, as we all know. But Normandy Shores itself is right here. Jacobson and Peterson for the beach, down to 37 South, and then half of Haysport and half of North Lagoon right into the mix. So that gives you a specific idea of what of the huge territory we're discussing today. From 10,000 BC, when the Native American began to repopulate this area until just a few hundred years ago, the island was completely uninhabited. The Lenni-Lenapis would come in the summer for a couple of months of clam digging and fishing and that sort of thing to stock up for the long, cold winters. Now, the first mention in recorded history is of the famous third voyage of Henry Hudson, which took place in 1609. Hudson apparently, now there's some arguments, some dispute about this, because some biographers say that he sailed up the coast, saw Barnegat Inlet, sailed in and then up through the bay towards Cranberry Inlet, and then others say he did this instead. It was very rough there. We can thank Dale for that, by the way. That's beyond my PowerPoint skills. When they got to the Barnegat Inlet, they realized how rough the shoals were there. And some people credit Hudson, some people credit Cornelius May, but somebody early on christened it Barnegat, which means Dutch for inlet with breakers, or shoals with breakers. So it was originally Barnegat, and then on early maps it was misspelled Barnegat, or along those lines, and ultimately became Barnegat. But that's where that comes from. Now, what they saw, this is the inlet, by the way, for those of you who don't really recognize it, the lighthouse is right here. What they saw was this, basically. There's still enough left in various spots along Barnegat Bay so that we have an idea of what it all looked like. And crew member Robert Jewett, who was keeping the log for the voyage, notes in his journal on September 2nd, 1609, the day they saw all this, "This is a very good land to fall with and a pleasant land to see." Now, after that, the area in its entirety was claimed by the Dutch and became the colony of New Netherland. And there was problems with this right from the start, because the British, who hired John Cabot, who I just found out was Italian, Giovanni Caboto, in the late 1490s, he was hired by Henry VII to sail up and down the east coast of the New World, and so he claimed it all for New England. So right from the beginning, there was some contention over who really owned this land. But this is a map of New Netherland, which doesn't necessarily show any borders, because there were no borders. It was very, very, sort of back and forth, the British and the Spanish and the French and the Dutch, but these were the initial Dutch settlements in the New World. So this is the general area of New Netherland, and as I'm sure you all know, we're basically right here. This is the very first map that I was able to find, which shows the Barrier Islands survey. This was a map made in New Amsterdam in 1639 by Johan Vinkelmans. My Dutch is almost as good as my Swahili. But it does show basically Long Beach Island and the Barnegat Peninsula without any additional inlet going through. I'm sure you also all know from time to time, inlets have a habit of breaking through and then closing up again. The British seized control of New Netherland in 1664, and you probably know they sailed into New York Harbor and took over New Netherland without firing a shot, even though Pegler and Pete Stuyvesant was all for blasting them from the decrepit fort at the tip of Manhattan Island, but they realized that it was a losing battle and a lot of people would be seriously injured or die in the process. So after 3 days, the Dutch population persuaded him to turn over New Netherland to the British without a shot. The British claimed that they already owned the land because of John Cabot, and it probably didn't help that at the time Holland and England were at war. Now, the purpose of this, of course, was to combine the southern colonies with New England, because New Netherland was smack in the middle of what the British considered their turf. The Monmouth Patent was issued in 1665, the next year, and it basically identified a huge slice of New Jersey shore as the county of Monmouth, right along here. Now, this map dates to 1834. So in 1834, Monmouth and Ocean was still a single county. This is the detail of that map. In 1685, the Manasquan Beach Company claimed 2,500 acres from what is now Spring Lake down to the Barnegat Inlet. So all of that, about 2,500 acres, they claimed, and it became part of Shrewsbury Township. By this point in time, the area had been largely explored. although the charts were very, very cursory. Now again, this dates from a map in 1834, and it shows Cranberry Inlet on the map, even though it had already closed. So in 1834, it was still very much a memory. We'll talk about that in a few moments. In the 18th century, this area was known as Swan Beach. And a little later, it started being called Chadwick Beach, or Chadwicks, after an important local family. Very few people, if any, was living on the island, even through the 18th century. It was strictly seasonal, and it was used in the summer months again for fishing activities. Whaling began to pick up at this time, which survived into the 19th century. Early maps show absolutely no place names. So even as late as 1834, there's not a single place name on this map. The only people who were living within the vicinity were people here in Island Heights, and they were living in the caves. They used to be along the edge of the heights. So it was very, very rough and tumble in those days. And apart from Tom's River, which I only just learned, was one of the oldest settlements on the East Coast. 1684 and 1687 was the date of the first settlement of Tom's River. So who knew? Cranberry Inlet closed in 1812. It remained open from 1740 or thereabouts until 1812. But we do have records of it having been open periodically before that. They said every 80 years or so it had a habit of opening and closing. So the last time it opened should have been in the 1890s, but I guess nobody told it. In 1740, John Lawrence surveyed 10 miles from Manasquan Inlet up here down to Cranberry Inlet. And this is the first time this area was officially surveyed. And at the time, he described it, as being a deserted stretch of sand dunes, scrub pines, coastal meadows, and cedar stands. And any of you who've ever been to Island Beach knows exactly what he's talking about, because that's what all of this looked like at that time. Cranberry Inlet made Tom's River an extremely important ocean-going port, and that's why Tom's River was founded, and that's why it continued to grow all the way through the early 19th century. The area south of Cranberry Inlet, since this was open, became known as Island Beach because it was a separate island. There was also another inlet that opened and closed periodically further up along here, which was called Herring Inlet. And that actually happened to be pretty much exactly where the ocean broke through 3 years ago, where the Bellov Bridge is. It's a very, very low dip. And so even today, the barrier island can still be prone to having inlets open and close. Of course, with roads and construction and all that, it's not as likely. But that happened 3 years ago. Also, in the 18th century, a lot of seasonal industry began forming right here in the area. There was fishing and whaling off the beach. Also, there was a great deal of logging activity just inland. We think of them as the pine barrens, but there were great stands of oak. And there was also a burgeoning charcoal and turpentine industry. So in the 18th century, there was a lot of exploitation of the natural resources. It's just that people weren't really living here. If any of you have been to Bastow or Alair also know that there was a bog iron industry, which was crucial to the Revolutionary War because there were no iron deposits within accessible reach of the Revolutionary Army, and so they extracted iron from the bog deposits in elsewhere. In 1758, the very few remaining Latino Indians who had survived the incursion of Europeans and all the diseases they brought with them were forcibly relocated by the British to a reservation near Burlington. And then later on in the century and into the 19th century, they were dispersed to the prairie states and then up north in Canada. So we have virtually no Native American representation here in this region of New Jersey any longer, and that's why it goes back to 1758. 20 years later, in 1778, what's going on? The Revolution, exactly. The British sailed up the Manasquan River as far as what is now Brielle, and they destroyed the Union Salt Works, which were a very key manufacturing, not only because salt itself was very valuable, but because salt was a crucial ingredient in gunpowder. And so the British destroyed the Union Salt Board, which was located right where the marinas are, in Rio. A few years later, they sailed up the Toms River and burned the Toms River to the ground. There was a blockhouse in Toms River in those days, reconstruction obviously. Toms River blockhouse stored cannon and ammunition. And interestingly enough, the British sailed up and destroyed the whole town of Toms River in 1782, while negotiations were already underway in Paris for a peace treaty. And when they created an active hostility like that, including a number of deaths, it created real problems in the Treaty of Paris because it should not have happened. But what they were really trying to do was retaliate because Toms River was a seat for the privateers who sailed out through Cranberry Inlet and preyed on English shipping. So they were just trying to get even. In the early 19th century, we're moving closer to us now. Most residents who were living on the island were still only living there part of the time. Most of the people who lived there were either ex-convicts, escapees, or people from elsewhere who had fled to the barrier island to get away from death. So it was fairly unsavory to much people. But it was probably just, several score, maybe 40, 60 people living on the entire length of the American Peninsula. In 1804, things began to change because a bridge was constructed across the Manasquan, exactly where the Route 70 bridge is today. And that was the first connection between this area and the rest of New Jersey by land. At this point, you had to take a boat to get out here. There was no land connections at all for the first 200 years, basically, that people knew this was there. Now, this is Cloverdale Farm State Park, but this is very reminiscent of what I guess Uncle Jakey's Tavern looked like. In 1811, Jacob Herbertsville, built the first building of any note on the barrier island in what is now Manloking. It was called Uncle Jakey's Tavern, and it was the advent of tourism on the beach. 1811, it was a lodge for hunters and fishermen. And it probably looked something very much like this. So, a little bit of imagination is involved here. The following year, in 1812, Cranberry Inlet closed for the last time. And all the efforts to reopen it failed. They tried for about 20 years to dig through again, and every time they opened it, it closed again. And it was really kind of a death blow to Toms River's nautical history. So Toms River became land, a land town rather than an ocean. In 1817, the first house in Loveland Town was constructed. Charles Stout built a home in Loveland Town. That was the advent of the first village type of settlement. Over the next several years, from 1817 on, a village began to. Now, do you all know where Loveland Town is? It's right at the Bridge Avenue Bridge, where Bridge Avenue and Bay Avenue connect in Manhattan. This building is standing now, which was a Loveland house. This was built in 1867, and it's the Manhattan Historical Society now. But that's why I included that picture. In 1826, Point Pleasant opens to tourism. Thomas Cook, owner of one of the 5 farms along the oceanfront in Point Pleasant, which, by the way, used to be called Sand Town. So I can't understand why they changed it to Point Pleasant. But he opened this farmhouse to boarders in 1826. And so Cook Homestead, Foreman House, and Curtis House subsequently all took in summer tenants, which were again mostly sportsmen and hunters and fishers. In 1830, the Chadwick family built Chadwick House. Now, unfortunately, this is the only image of the Chadwick House that I could find. The Chadwick House was extremely important to the history of this area. Some of the books say it was located near Orton. So my guess would be it was somewhere around what is now Chadwick Beach. But it was just a rather lovely situated house on the bay. Again, people were basically getting there by boat And again, it was a hunter's lodge, a fisherman's lodge. But Chadwick was very adventuresome, and he began investing in other lodges along with his neighbors, the Orderlies. And so they began to develop the beach for hunters and fishermen all through the 19th century. And by the mid-century, wow, there were 6 of these. So, I mean, you're talking, Atlantic City. In 1850, on February 15th, the state legislature created Ocean County out of Monmouth County. Monmouth was not pleased with this at all, but the people in Ocean County were very excited about it because it gave them a certain amount of self-governance. And as I said, by the mid-century, we had the fishing lodges, the sportsmen's lodges. We had an occasional fishing or whaling shack on the beach. Rescue work, shipwreck rescue work became very important as an alternative income, especially during the off months when farming was not viable. And you've probably all heard the stories of the Barnegat Pirates, where they say that people used to tie lanterns to a lame mule or horse and walk them up and down the beach, so the lantern would look like it was an ocean out at sea, and they would lure boats to their demise on the shovels. Now, there are probably a few examples of this, so it's true in that respect, but in fact, it does a vast disservice to the people who were living out here, who heroically risked life and limb to rescue the many ships who were legitimately stranded on the shelves during the bad weather. This stretch of the world became known as the graveyard of the Atlantic. To this day, there are hundreds of wrecks scattered all up and down the shelves just off of LBI and the North Peninsula. This was sort of the motivation for the life-saving legislation in the U.S. And this is the U.S. Coast Guard station in Chadwick, which is located on Kittiwake Avenue, where the firehouse is now. Those of you who go out for pancake breakfasts during the summer, you're in the replacement to this building. The Coast Guard was founded specifically because of a horrific wreck in 1846, which was the John Minter. If you don't know of this wreck, it's worth reading about. It was a horribly tragic wreck. It was one of those gales in the depths of winter, I believe it was January of 1846, including women and young children. They were sailing up from Savannah to New York. They got caught in the shoals. They foundered, they shipwrecked just offshore. But because of the fierceness of the gale, people could only stand on the shore and watch these people leaping, big Victorian skirts and little children and what have you, into the waves, trying to fight their way a few hundred yards to the shore. By the time they made it to the shore, they were frozen solid. And all hands were lost. It was just a horrible, horrible national catastrophe, and it began an outcry for legislation, which led to the Coast Guard. So one could argue some good came from that wreck. Another very famous wreck, which occurred in 1850, was the Ayrshire. Now, this was a boat with more than 200 Scottish and English immigrants aboard. Also got swept out because of a nasty storm. But if you notice, connecting the boat with the mainland is this funny-looking shape here on the rope, and that is called a life car. That was invented specifically because of the John Minter wreck. And this was the first time it was used, and all hands were saved except for one. You could only fit 2 people in the life car at a time, and his father, who was on board, put his 2 children in the life car, but he was so afraid to leave them alone that he climbed on top of it and was swept off the life car by a huge wave. So he drowned. Everybody else was saved and carried to shore. And just as a word of note, that actual life car is in the Tuckerton seashore. So you can go down there to the museum and see this actual life car to this day. Yes, question?
Is that the wreck they just found up here in the
Next.
That sounded the same.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. You all probably recall that this past autumn, while they were hammering steel plates into the dune, they hit something. It's a little hard to see, but there's all debris here, which is believed to be the Ayrshire. It's not yet been confirmed. This being New Jersey, anything, something that could take a few weeks. It's going to take several decades instead. But the logical conclusion, everybody does believe, because of a capstan that was found that was very specific to a certain period of time, they believe that the direct leak of Ayrshire was found. Yes. Thank you for asking that question. Now this is a map, it's 1869, of the railroad system at that time. Berkeley Township was incorporated, which included an area called Seaside Park. And that, in 1875, Seaside Park was incorporated, began development and grew steadily over the next 25 years. And in one of the town meetings, a clerk inadvertently wrote Seaside by mistake, and it's stuck. Now you'll notice there was a line of rails going up here to Cedar, and another one going down to Tom's River. In 1880, Captain John Arnold persuaded the Central Railroad of New York to run a spur line into Point Pleasant, which would be here-ish. He paid them a lot of drives and offered them free land in return for them running a line, which he then continued right down what became Arnold Avenue. Imagine that, Captain John Arnold naming a street after himself. But that rail was the first rail connection with our beach anywhere, and it put Point Pleasant on the map. Just before that, the year before, in 1879, the Bay Head Land Company, formed by several Princeton businessmen, was formed specifically for the purpose of establishing a high-end, exclusive resort town, and I think we can all agree they were successful. In 1881, Captain Arnold and some of his cronies got jealous of how quickly Bay Head was taking off, and so they formed another land company, which was called the Mantelope Land Company, because they wanted to build a resort to rival Bay Head. Now, Mantelope sounds very Indian, but it actually means nothing. It's a completely bogus word. But it obviously also caught on. Now, this is a map of the rail system in 1887. In 1881, the Pennsylvania Railroad opened the Philadelphia-Camden to Seaside Park line, which later was extended and became the Philadelphia Long Branch line, which came across at Tom's River, across the bridge to Seaside Park, and then up the barrier island, where it connected in Bay Head, which is why Bay Head is Bay Head Junction, and then continued up to Long Branch and ultimately to New York City. Now, you all probably know Long Branch was the premier resort in the 19th century. Long Branch, Newport, and Cape Bay were the places to go. So that's why Long Branch was so important to connect with them. Now, the station stops marked here are the ones in 1887. I found nothing online that indicated that there was a station stop in Normandy Beach. But since Normandy Beach was incorporated in 1916, so I'm getting ahead of myself here, I am going to venture a guess that that station was not one of the original ones that it opened when Normandy was incorporated. The original ones were, let's see, mainland stops were Tom's River, here, then Beechwood, then Ocean Gate, and Barnegat Pier. Now, Ocean Gate is very, very interesting because here at Barnegat Pier, Ocean Gate, there was a huge marina built right on the bay, and so people could travel as far as Barnegat Pier and then get off there and get onto hired boats. And the fishermen out here used to work all winter and into the spring, and then in the summer, make their boats bright colors, scrape all the barnacles off the hulls, and rent the boats out for the summer people. And this is in the 1880s, because that was more lucrative than trying to fish. Then the train continued across the bridge to Seaside Park, and then Berkeley, Wortley, Lawlett, Chadwick, and then Lenia, Mantelope, and then Bay Head Junction. So as I said, I'm sure Normandy Beach was a later stop in the route. Well, with the railroad running up the island, I don't have to tell you what happened. All around the train stations, development began almost immediately. This is a photograph of the Chadwick train station. I nearly fell down when I found this online. It's a very low-res image, unfortunately, but here is Chadwick around 1900. This right here is Normandy Bay. So we're looking east towards the beach, but you'll notice there's nothing else around it. Now, if you're interested in knowing where Chadwick train station was located in what is now the intersection of Amberjack Way and 37 South. And if you drive down to Amberjack now, you'll notice that the street inexplicably opens right at 37 South. And that is the remnant of the parking area where the fish towns used to bring their truckloads, their crates of fish, to Chadwick to load onto the train. So there's that strange opening there to this day. It's a holdover from when the train station was still there. Now this is an aerial shot of Seaside Park. This is 14th Avenue, so this is the southern extension of Seaside Park. This is, for those of you who know, this is where the farmers market is located, so that's what this is all into perspective. And if you go out to the Bayside Beach, you'll notice right there, I hope all of you in the back can see it because it is very bright here today. There's a little finger of something sticking out into the water. That is actually a surviving remnant of the old railroad bridge, which is now a fishing pier. So the railroad bridge entered from Barnegat Pier on the southern side of the Tom's River, across the bay, and hit Seaside Park down at 14th Avenue, and then turned up towards us. So yeah, other survivors of the old railroad line are, as I said, Amberjack Way, a little gap there. And also if you go up to Bay Head, if you look at Twilight Lake, you'll see the remains of a causeway that used to go across Twilight Lake and into the Bay Head station right there. Over the next 70 years, communities, yes.
When they were putting in the new sewers, the infrastructure, they came up with a great big piece of the railroad.
Where was this?
Right up here.
Right up here, they found a piece of the railroad?
4th and 5th.
Wow, that's exciting. Did you drag it home with me? With the exception of Chadwick, most of the areas around the train stations began developing slowly, gradually, but steadily. But something was up with Chadwick that didn't exist on the rest of the station stops, and that was the Chadwick fisheries. Now, this is what led to my whole exploring of the history of this area, because down I found pieces of the Chadwick fisheries, the fish pound, in our backyard. And again, I didn't know what they were, I never heard of this. So this is what led to my finding all of this information out. The Chadwick fisheries had actually 3 locations, right where Normandy Shores is now, plus 2 further south in Lavalette. And they opened because of this rail access. This is another painting of Chadwick fisheries. These both were done by F.I. Bennett around 1920. And this is the bunkhouse. One of the things that you'll find when you research fish pounds, there's a lot of pictures of the boats, a lot of pictures of the men, there's a lot of pictures of the fish, but there's almost nothing of the actual physical buildings. And you have to imagine what's now Normandy Shores looking like this. And first of all, I'd like to recommend a book to you. It's a book by Bellov, which was written in 1990, I believe. Out of print, very hard to find, but there are several copies of it in the library system down here. So it's a great afternoon to read. There's not a lot of text to it, but there's a lot of interesting documents and photographs and that sort of thing. So I recommend you all to support the local library anyway, but you can order this book from them and take it out and enjoy it. But what were the fish pounds? It was a whole different way of fishing that had originally been invented around 1800 up off of Sandy Hook. And the photographs I'm going to show you are exclusively of the Chadwick fisheries. There are very, very few photos of Chadwick fisheries, but there are lots of the other ones. Over the course of the 19th century, these fish pounds sort of mushroomed all along the Jersey coast, wherever people could get to them. And what they basically did was row out about half a mile to a mile offshore and set out these very complex systems of poles and nets so that fish, while they were migrating, would get caught in these sort of traps and swim unbeknownst into a weir, kind of an area where they could not then get out. And then these brave men in their 33-foot-long pound boats would row out there periodically and check the weirs and see what was in there. Sometimes as much as 2 or 3 times a day when the fish were running. And they would hold the nets up load the boats with the nets, and then row back in with the fish. And here is what the pounds right along here. So you can see it was sticking up out of the border about a half mile to a mile offshore. They had little special lights on and everything, so the traffic out there would know that they were there. This is a crew from the 1920s. Here they are bringing in the nets. Originally they were hauled in by horses. They used to have each a team of 3 horses that would haul the nets or haul the fish boats up onto the beach, and then all the processing would begin. Later on, they started using trucks, and these were pound boats at rest. Now, we're stepping back in time again. We're going back to 1884, because this is important. In 1884, Barrier Island was finally connected to the mainland for the first time with its own bridge. Do they want to guess where it was? Menaloking. Okay, in order to give Menaloking a leg up on Bayhead, because Bayhead was connected to the mainland, Menaloking, the developers built their own bridge. And that bridge is located right where the bridge is today. So we have Bayhead and Menaloking now, and the railroad bridge along Seaside. So basically the through connections are there. It changed things forever. This is an aerial photograph of Lavalette on the Normandy border. Now, this could be 1882, but that would have been a neat trick since planes hadn't been invented yet. But this is actually 1920. But if you look at it, it's basically Menaloking today. This is actually Lavalette in 1920. So it just gives you an idea of what the developed parts of the island looked like at that time. And this is an overall of the whole area. Now, few houses. Okay, this is basically Lavalette on the Normandy border. Nothing northerly, nothing up here. A couple more houses up here. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And today, whoa! Now, I have christened this talk boats and trains and automobiles, because the 3 factors that made the island what it is today are the 3 major sources of transportation. First boats, the train, and then finally automobiles. This would look like this today if it hadn't been. First for the boats, then for the train, and then for the automobiles. Now, this is a road map from 1913. In 1911, the full length of Ocean Avenue, as it was called back then, Route 35, was graded and gravelled. And here it is right here. And the fact that it's red means that it was done by the state. All of the red highlights on this map, road map from 1913, indicate parts of roads that were approved by the state. So New Jersey knew that creating this road map was going to raise property values and increase tax coffers. In 1913, the same year of this map, Seaside Heights was incorporated. So Seaside Heights is much newer than Seaside Park. In 1914, the automobile bridge from Toms River to Seaside Heights was constructed. This is the bridge. I'm guessing from the multitude of cars on it, looking at the cars, that this is roughly 1935, thereabouts. But this is what it looked like from 1913 until, let's say, 1954. In 1916, what happened? Exactly. And that's, again, since I only know about Normandy Shores, I can't talk about Normandy Beach. But in the midst of all this, somebody got the idea to incorporate Normandy Beach. And as I said before, my guess is that's when Normandy Beach train station opens. But the island is growing and growing and growing. And it's the automobile and the access to the automobile that makes all this happen. In the 1920s, there's growth all up and down the barrier beach, except for the area around Chadwick. Because of the fisheries, nobody wanted to live near Chadwick because it stunk. It was just that simple. It stunk. And so the area around Chadwick remains undeveloped all through this explosion, this first period of massive development. Now, in 1929, we all know what happened. The Great Depression really pulled the rug out from under all of this. Development, all but halted, really down to a snail's pace. And it continued pretty much through the 1930s. But not only development, but also the New Jersey fishing industry. The fish pounds were hit very, very hard because it was expensive to run these things, and there was no money. Fisheries closed up and down the Jersey Shore. But by the late 1930s, with a little bit of money beginning to appear in the economy again, day trippers began getting back down to the beach, and there begins to be the first rumblings of new development. In 1937, an editorial in the Ocean County Review calls for a 4-lane bridge across Barnaby Bay to meet present-day traffic conditions. So that implies that people were coming back down by the late 1930s. Real estate development begins again, and in 1941, Chattery Beach is incorporated as a community. Wow, Pam! December 7, 1941, the day that will live in infamy, all of a sudden development stops cold and doesn't begin again until after World War II. On December 1st, 1946, 300 feet of the Toms River Seaside Railroad bridge burns. The Pennsylvania Railroad was looking to divest itself of this line because it wasn't making any money anymore by this point, and somehow magically 300 feet of the bridge burned down. Well, clearly the bridge was never rebuilt. In 1947, Ocean Beach begins grading, surveying, dredging, and street construction. So this shows the lagoon side of Ocean Beach in 1947. This is an aerial photo of Ocean Beach in 1947. So it just gives you an idea of what was down that ways. Again, remember, in 1947, Chattery Fisheries is still in operation. So it was actually the very last of the fisheries to remain in operation on the Barnaby Peninsula. In 1948, Monterey Beach Association begins construction. This is an aerial photo of the early 1950s. This is Chadwick Island. So you'll notice not only that nothing had been built by the early 50s in Chadwick Island, but look how much of it is really water. Now this shows the fishery in 1947, which is pretty much the last year the fisheries was in operation. After the railroad stopped running on the island, it was just economically unviable to ship the fish from Chadwick up to New York or to Newark or down to Philadelphia, because they had to do it by truck. Refrigerated trucks had been invented yet, and traffic was always getting worse and worse and worse, and they just couldn't hack it anymore. So 1947 was the final year that the fishery was in operation. Plus the fact that at this point, heavy-duty dredging for fish started taking place off the ocean, off the beach, and with that, all the sand bottoms of the ocean were being pulled up. Fish were being wiped out by the zillions. It was really the start of a major demise of the fishing industry. In 1949, the remaining tracks were removed along what's now 37 South, and that created another building where it was all of a sudden all that land opened on the bay. This may be one of the very last tuna ever caught in fish pounds. In 1952, Silver Beach begins construction and development. So Silver Beach predates Normandy Shores also. But something else that happened in 1954 was the Parkway, which, let's face it, changed things forever. The Parkway opens, and thousands of day trippers, weekenders, renters, and new vacation home owners flood the barrier island, resulting in this is a photo of Route 37 in July of 1954. This is everybody trying to get from the exit Toms River of the Garden State Parkway to the bridge to Seaside. So you can see some things just change. So they realized immediately that they needed to build a bigger bridge, and so the second span was constructed in 1954. This is a photo of the fishery owners in 1946. Now think to the streets in Normandy Shores. From left to right, Lester Hayes, Tom Hayes. This gentleman here all the way to the right is Augustus C. Hayes, the Hayes brothers as in Hayes Court. Here is Otto Peterson as in Peterson Lane. And here is Jack Jacobson. Jack Jacobson as in Jacobson Lane. For those of you who know Carla Webb, this is Carla's grandfather. And these were the owners of the Chadwick fishery, and these are the owners who in 1948 sold the land of Chadwick Fisheries, which was one of the largest single remaining pieces of land in the area, to Jake's son Jack, who began developing Normandy Shores. Original deeds to Normandy Shores, this is a history of Normandy Shores, stipulated that houses should be freestanding and single family. There are 2 houses in Normandy Shores which are duplexes, so those clearly predate the stipulations. He also copies Silver Beach, which had opened just a few years before, by creating lots very markedly different than Normandy Beach. Your lots tend to be narrow and deep. Normandy Shores lots copy Silver Beach. They're wide and shallow. And he also ran the utilities poles between the backyards of properties because he didn't want them on the streets. So if you notice, Normandy Shores and Silver Beach do not have utility poles on the streets. They're all in the back. And the utility company hates that because it's hard for them to get to them, but it looks nice from the roads, right? The Normandy Shores Beach Club was formally incorporated on August 27, 1954. Aggressive development of the lots begins immediately and moves very, very quick. This is a photograph of 28 Jacobson in 1955 while it was under construction. This is after it was done. And the Subinos didn't know that they originally had a sunroom inside their house that they saw this photograph. This is 3566 Ocean Terrace, the very last house on Ocean Terrace before it dead ends. And this is taken in July of 1955. Most of the houses on the side streets were nearly identical and built by workers working with Jake and his wife Shirley Jacobson. Bill Everett, who lived in 112 Peterson, and ultimately Bill Cobb and Point Pleasant were the original contractors. A few of the houses were built by outside contractors, and you can tell them the ones that survived because they're markedly different from the rest of them. This is Jacobson Lane. This is where we live. So you know it's our property is just being excavated at this point. This is an aerial photo taken sometime in late 1955. There's still people on the beach. Keno's house is finished, so it's after July 1955. Our house is being excavated, so it's 1955. Whose house is this? The house that used to be there anyway. And the final lot along the beach was the Linsio property, which wasn't developed until the 1970s. So, those of you who know Carla, her house is here. But this shows the beach just really a year after Normandy Shores was incorporated. So how quickly things went up. So by the early 1960s, most development along the stretch of shore was done. Now, this is Normandy Beach, okay? And some of you might be able to tell me what you actually hear in this photograph better because you did look for landmarks that you know about. Really, since the 1970s, there's been very little development of Normandy Shores. The only commercial property within Normandy Shores was the old Chadwick Fisheries, which is now Labrador Lounge, and I know many of you remember when that was still a fish market. In 1971, the Beach Club bought the remaining beach acreage, so we owned the beach from the high water mark back from Bud Church, and that was really the last major change to Normandy Shores until, yes, we all know what this is. Now, even though we all know that the beach was changing up and down, gradually, this changed. This totally changed the game forever. Some of us experienced massive destruction. Normandy Shores on the bay side was very, very hard hit because it was everything on the bay side by the storm surge. But the ocean side of Normandy Shores actually survived quite well. And the theory behind that is that because we were built on top of the fisheries and they just sort of plowed everything under and just paved over it with sand, we're about 1.5 feet higher than the surrounding area in that neighborhood. Because our block is rated A+, and so we don't even have to elevate. And yeah, and we think it's simply because they just plowed under the fishery. So we're that high. Many families, of course, have chosen to restore and reconstruct existing houses, but many other first-era houses were torn down and are being replaced with new construction. And so the future, I think we're going to experience basically a very different beach, a very different shore. We all know it was changing anyway, but the new homes that are going up now are getting larger and larger and larger, having more and more of their lots, and then there's also the issue of having to raise the houses for insurance purposes, so the whole streetscape is going to change. As well as losing some of our sky, our streets are also going to become much more densely built up because of the height requirements. So remember what's here and what was, because it's gone. Also, there's an economic demographic that's changing, because when most of these properties were developed, it was working class, it was middle class, it was people who basically had a chance to buy a house on or near the ocean. And that's all changing too. We all know what's happened to property values down here. And so the people who are buying today come from a very different world, a very different attitude. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong or right or anything like that. It's just change is inevitable. There's also a growing trend to year-round residents. In Normandy Shores, nobody lived in Normandy Shores year-round back in the 60s. And now, little by little, people are moving down. I'm also starting to notice, being a garden club, that a lot of the natural vegetation that has managed to survive is really being destroyed by all of this new development. I mean, I just think about what's happened down at Silver Beach, at the Bayside Beach, and the beautiful pines were just completely destroyed in order to build that side. We're very upset about that. Those of you who know our property, we're the little yellow ranch house on Jacobson, and we've spent the last 10 years bringing in native species. We personally just applaud you as people interested in gardening, because we need a lot more. And 12,000 years of history. Thank you.